All right, Nick, let's talk about the Chicago Bears. As we all know, the Chicago Bears head coaching search is on, but there's one crucial element in the coaching search that I think a lot of people have been looking at, and that is the general manager and what they're going to do with general manager Ryan Poles. We have a very interesting update on the Chicago Bears thoughts with Ryan Poles. We'll get in that in just a minute, but before we do, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Poles and the Chicago Bears, very interesting relationship there. I think that's going to be one of the biggest factors and who's going to be the next head coach of this Bears team. Do they like Poles? Do they not like Poles? And we have an interesting update on what the Bears might be thinking and where they might be going with Ryan Poles. Let's get into it and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from over on Sports Mockery. It says, Brad Biggs revealed last week the Chicago Bears have done something unusual. When they hired Ryan Poles, they signed him to a standard 4-year contract. However, head coach Matt Eberflus got a 5-year deal. Whatever their reasoning, this means Poles will go into 2025 with only 1 year left, making him a lame duck if the Bears were to keep him. This creates two scenarios. Either they sign him to an extension or they choose to part ways. However, there's an unexpected twist in the situation. According to Adam Johns of Home and John's podcast, the Bears have a deadline to worry about if they are to extend Poles. It must be done by the end of next week before the coaching search kicks off. I think that's a really important part here is that the Bears had a deadline on when to extend or not to extend Ryan Poles. End of next week. It makes us think, what exactly are they doing? Is there some underlying factors with head coaches who don't want to be with Ryan Poles? Have they already decided to move away from him? Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Chicago fans, in the comment section below, let us know. I think there's a mixed bag of people on what they think about Ryan Poles, what he's done so far. And there's been some good, and I also think there's been some bad. So let us know in the comment section below, what do you think about Ryan Poles? Is he a guy? Should he stay with the team? Is he the future of this franchise as general manager? Do you want him gone? Are you tired of, the misses like the Chase Claypools of the world and the N'Keal Harris of the world? Are you tired of those kind of things? Do you want to see some new blood? Let us know what your thoughts are on the general manager position in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think all of this actually means for Ryan Poles and the Bears?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here, certainly. So first of all, let's talk about the lame duck situation. That is incredibly rare to have any general manager go into a lame duck year where they go into a season where they're running the entire football side of the business of the franchise with basically no understanding if they're going to be there for the next year. Because GMs, they have to think, 2, 3, 4 years in advance while also focusing on the here and now. If you don't have a contract out that far, how do you think that far and build your team, right? It doesn't really work that well. In fact, it's so weird to have any sort of high ranking position in a franchise be on a 1 year kind of lame duck situation. The only situation like that I can remember in recent memory is what the Dallas Cowboys did this past season with their head coach, Mike McCarthy. And that was a weird kind of isolated incident because the Cowboys hired Mike McCarthy to win playoff games. He hadn't won enough playoff games. So he said, okay, we'll give you one more year. We'll see how this year goes and then reevaluate. Kind of a weird, funky deal. Different situation here, of course, in the Chicago Bears. Now, what does that mean? It means the Bears will either have to extend Ryan Poles or they'll have to fire him, essentially, which means they're going to either go with Poles with the future pairing with a head coach, whoever they go with, or they're going to get rid of him and they're going to bring in a GM who pairs well with their new head coach. Now, here's where things get interesting. If you look at the top candidates so far, we look at guys like Ben Johnson, Detroit Lions, you look at guys like Joe Brady with the Buffalo Bills, you look at guys like Cliff Kingsbury with the Washington Commanders, and then you throw in guys like Flores with the Minnesota Vikings as options. All of these guys are playoff teams, right? Which means these coordinators, they're going to be focused on games after the end of next week. So that puts an interesting element into it too. If you fire Ryan Poles, you have to find a GM before or with these coordinators that are also playing playoff football. It creates a confusing environment to try and get everything right. Challenging situation there for the Bears to handle. But I think the long story short here is that the Bears, my opinion, are going to move off of Ryan Poles. And the reason is if you look at Kevin Warren's history, president now of the Chicago Bears running the show for this franchise, well, I should say the last two major stops he went in his professional career, the Minnesota Vikings, where he was chief operating officer, and then the Big Ten commissioner. He came into those different organizations, the Vikings and the Big Ten, and immediately went after massive wholesale changes when paired with big franchise altering moves. So let's look at the Minnesota Vikings. He took over the Minnesota Vikings as the chief operating officer when the Vikings were rebuilding their new stadium, throwing hundreds of millions of dollars, completely revamping. Now, a lot of franchises, when that happens, they say, hey, listen, we're focusing on a new stadium, new facilities. Let's keep the rest of the business stable. Let's not throw everything into flux. Warren is different. He came into the Vikings and said, no, we're revamping everything. New human resources, new marketing, new everything, while being deep into the weeds, hands-on with that stadium. That's just the kind of guy he is. He's the guy that throws the kitchen sink when it's time to change and make big decisions. We're going to revamp the entire organization. That's what he did with the Big Ten. He goes to the Big Ten as commissioner. What does he do? He negotiates the biggest deal in Big Ten media history, changes the game for Big Ten football, while also completely altering college football forever, bringing in teams from the former Pac-12 like Washington, like USC, like UCLA, like Oregon, into the Big Ten, completely changing the dynamic of that conference in the college football world, while also doing all these media deals. That's who Kevin Warren is. He is a big change guy. He's not afraid of making wholesale moves across the board if he feels it's the right time to do so. I think he looks at the situation and says, listen, we've got Caleb Williams, we've got our quarterback. We're going to be making a massive wholesale move with our next head coach. He's got to be great. We've got to, while we're doing that, we've got to make sure he's paired with the right GM. Let's throw the kitchen sink at it. Ryan Poles, some good, some bad. Let's make sure we go all the changes we need right here, right now, over the next few weeks to put the leaders in place to carry this franchise into 2025 and beyond. I think we're going to start seeing more and more rumors. And when it's all said and done, I think Ryan Poles will not be the GM of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and again, I know Ryan Poles has done some good things. One good thing, namely in particular, when you look at his resume, that's the trade with the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, that set them up very good offensively, getting DJ Moore, Caleb Williams, and Darnell Wright. But if you look at his other body of work and you're kind of scrutinous about it, there's a lot of bad on the Ryan Poles resume that I think is hard to overlook. You look at his winning percentage, .280 win percentage in his tenure there, worst in the Bears history of the last 5 GMs. He has the worst winning percentage. I think it's actually the worst win percentage a Bears GM has ever had. So that's something that you can hang your hat on. That is one ticket out the door for Ryan Poles. On top of that, they've replaced key roster moves, David Montgomery, James Daniels, and Roquan Smith. When they replace them, they bring in DeAndre Swift, Nate Davis, and Tremaine Edmonds. I would say none of those are necessarily upgrades, and then probably moves that just didn't necessarily go very well for them. Obviously, the Chase Claypool trades, Brian Bates, N'Keal Harry, all those trades, not really great. But again, as we said, there was the Carolina Panthers move. That was one really big bright spot for him. So there has been some good, but there's been a lot of bad as well. That brings me to my second point here as to why I think he's going to go. We all know the Bears looking for a new head coach. They've been very active, and there's the rumors between them linking them to Ben Johnson. He was interested in them last year. There's a lot of talks going on there. He's interested in them again now, and that they're ramping up for a full-scale presentation, and they're really trying to go after Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson says that his number 1 and 2 criteria for any team is alignment between the head coach and general manager. So I think that shows maybe the Bears have some ideas that Ben Johnson is not in alignment with a guy like Ryan Poles. There's not a lot there for him to like. So he is on his way out. And at the end of the day, I think anytime you're hiring a new head coach, like you said, Kevin Warren, more wholesale type of changes, it's just good to start fresh. Have a GM, have a head coach that can come in, work together on a clean slate. Don't let them have your dirty laundry from before. Say, hey, there's this guy. He did this one really good thing a while ago. It was a pretty good move, but here's all the other laundry list of bad stuff he's done. You got to work with him. You got to figure it out. So I think overall, this would be a good step forward for a fresh head coach. And it shows me that they are looking into what these head coaching candidates want, mainly Ben Johnson wanting more continuity between head coach and general manager. I agree with you. I think the Ryan Poles is on his way out.